My sister sent me a wedding invitation in a cream envelope with my name written in gold ink. It was beautiful. It was also the most audacious thing she had ever sent me. Because 6 months before that envelope arrived, she had done something that changed everything between us. She expected me to sit in a pew and smile and pretend. I did not go. And I have not spent a single day regretting it. Welcome to Haely Stories. This is the place where you will find real and emotional women's stories that will touch your heart, make you feel seen, and remind you that you are never alone in what you are going through. If that is something you need in your life, then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell icon so you never miss a single story. Now let me tell you about the invitation I did not accept, the wedding I did not attend, and why choosing myself that day was the most important thing I have ever done. My name is McGrath, and I am 29 years old. I know McGrath is an unusual first name. It was my maternal grandmother's surname, and my mother gave it to me as a first name because she wanted to carry something of her forward. I grew up having to explain it to every new teacher and every new acquaintance, and I have long since made my peace with it. It is mine and I have grown into it, and I would not change it now that my sister's name is Violet. She is 4 years older than me, and she has been, for most of my life, the person I most wanted to be close to and the person who most consistently made that closeness difficult. I want to be fair to Violet because fairness matters to me even when the person I am being fair to has not extended the same courtesy. She is not entirely a villain in this story. She is a complicated person who has made some deeply painful choices and who has never quite understood the weight of what those choices cost the people around her. That is its own kind of failing. But it is not the same as cruelty, and I think the distinction matters. What happened between us 6 months before her wedding was not the first difficult thing. It was the last one. The one that crossed a line I had been watching her approach for years and had always told myself she would not cross. She crossed it. And when the cream envelope arrived with my name in gold ink, I understood, with a clarity that surprised me with how clean it felt, that I was not going to walk into that church and perform a happiness I did not feel. My name is McGrath. I am 29 years old. And this is the story of the choice I made, and what it cost me, and why I would make it again. Growing up, Violet and I had the kind of relationship that looks like closeness from the outside and feels like something more complicated from the inside. She was the older one, which in our family meant she was the one who set the terms. The one whose opinion carried more weight. The one who decided, usually without consulting anyone, what the dynamic between us was going to be and expected me to fall into it. I fell into it for a long time. Because she was my sister and I loved her, and because the alternative, pushing back, establishing my own terms, refusing to accommodate her version of who I was supposed to be, felt like a risk I was not yet ready to take. Violet was also capable of great warmth. That is the thing about complicated people, the warmth is real. The kindness is real. The moments when she showed up for me, when she was funny and loyal and the sister I had always wanted her to be, were not performances. They were genuine. And they were what kept me coming back, kept me extending grace, kept me believing that the version of Violet I loved was the true one and the other version was the exception. Understand now that they were both true. That is the hardest thing to accept about someone you love, that the person who hurt you and the person who held you are the same person. Our relationship had been strained for about a year before the betrayal. Not dramatically. Just the accumulation of small things, choices she made that affected me without consulting me, comments that landed wrong, the particular feeling of being consistently treated as a supporting character in a story that was always hers. I had said things. Not enough. But some things. And she had listened in the way that some people listen, attentively, seemingly, and without changing anything. And then came the thing that changed everything. I'm going to tell you what Violet did because I think you need to know, but I am also going to tell you carefully. Because some of it involves people beyond just the two of us, and I want to be honest without being more specific than necessary. Violet told something. That is the most accurate way I can say it. She told something that was not hers to tell. Something I had shared with her in confidence, in the specific and complete confidence of a younger sister telling an older sister something she had not yet told anyone else, something that was private and vulnerable and that I had shared because I trusted her. She told it to our mother. And our mother told other people. And by the time it reached me, not from Violet, never directly from Violet, but in the sideways way that information travels through families, it had moved through enough people that there was no containing it and no pretending it had not happened. I confronted Violet. She said she had not thought it would spread that way. She said she had only told Mum because she was worried about me. She said she had meant well. I want to tell you how I felt when she said she had meant well. I felt something very quiet and very final click into place, because I meant well is what people say when they have done something they cannot justify and they have decided that their intention is sufficient to cover the impact. It is what people say when they do not believe they owe you an accounting, just an explanation of their motives, as though motives are what you were hurt by. I was not hurt by her motives. I was hurt by what she did. I said that. I said it clearly. And then I told her that I needed space and I took it. The 6 months between the confrontation and the wedding invitation were a particular kind of difficult. Not the acute, sharp difficult of the confrontation itself. The chronic, ambient difficult of a wound that has not healed because the conditions for healing are not present. Violet and I were not in contact. I had asked for space and she had given it to me in the specific way that people give you space when they have decided that your anger will pass if they simply wait it out. I did not want to be waited out. I wanted to be heard. And the distinction between those two things, between someone giving you space because they understand that you need it and someone giving you space because they have decided your reaction is temporary, was something I felt very clearly during those months. My mother called me several times. She was doing the thing that mothers do when their children are in conflict, trying to smooth it over, trying to find the middle ground, trying to construct a narrative in which both sides had a point and the solution was for everyone to meet in the middle. I did not want the middle. The middle would have required me to treat what Violet had done as something that could be balanced against something I had done, and I had not done anything that needed balancing. Was patient with my mother. I understood why she was doing it. But I did not change my position. And then, 5.5 months after the confrontation, the envelope arrived. I held it for a moment before I opened it. It was, objectively, a beautiful invitation. Heavy card. Gold lettering. The kind of stationery that communicates effort and care and the seriousness with which the occasion is being taken. Inside was my name, McGrath, written in the same gold ink. And the date. And the venue. And a small handwritten note at the bottom in Violet's handwriting that said, "I hope you will be there." It would mean everything to me. I sat at my kitchen table and I read it twice. And then I put it down and I sat with what I felt. What I felt was not anger, or not primarily anger. What I felt was something more like exhaustion at the expectation. The assumption, implicit in that cream envelope and that handwritten note, that 6 months was sufficient. That a wedding invitation was a kind of resolution. That I would understand, in the way younger sisters are expected to understand, that life moves forward and people move forward and what had happened and now there was a wedding and I was expected to come. I thought about what going would mean. Sitting in a church watching Violet get married. Smiling in photographs. Having conversations at the reception with people who knew what had happened or did not know and either way required me to perform something I did not feel, thought about what not going would mean. The family conversation. My mother's reaction. The version of events that would circulate, that I had missed my sister's wedding, that I was being difficult, that I was holding a grudge. I thought about what I actually felt. What I genuinely, honestly felt when I sat quietly with it. And what I felt was that I was not ready. That 6 months of space had not resolved anything because nothing had been resolved, only waited out. That walking into that church would be a performance of a forgiveness I had not reached and a relationship that had not been repaired. I decided not to go. I did not send a card declining the invitation. I called her. Not because I wanted a confrontation. I had had the confrontation 6 months ago and I was not interested in another one. But because I thought she deserved to hear it from me directly rather than find out through an empty seat and a missing RSVP. She answered on the 3rd ring. I said, "Violet, I received the invitation. I wanted to call you rather than just not respond." She said, "Okay." I said, "I am not going to be there." A pause. Then she said, "McGrath." I said, "I want to explain why, if you will let me." She said, "Go ahead." I said, "What happened 6 months ago has not been resolved between us. You gave me space, I am grateful for that, but space is not the same as resolution. We have not had a real conversation about what happened. You have not, in any form that felt genuine to me, acknowledged what it actually cost me. And I am not able to sit in a church and celebrate with you as though the relationship between us is something it is not yet." She said, "I apologized." I said, "You told me you meant well." That is not the same as an apology. Silence. I said, "I hope the day is beautiful. I genuinely do. I am not trying to punish you or make a statement. I am telling you the truth about where I am. And where I am is not ready to be in that room." She said, "You are really not coming." I said, "I am really not coming." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "You are going to regret this." I said, "Maybe. But I think I would regret going more." And why Mother called me within an hour of my call with Violet. I had expected this. In our family, information moves quickly and my mother positions herself at the center of it as a matter of instinct. She is not malicious in this. She is simply someone who believes that family problems are solved by family intervention and that her role in that intervention is primary. She was upset. Not explosively, my mother does not do explosive. She was upset in the sustained and pressured way that is, in some ways, harder to sit with than an explosion. She said she could not understand how I could miss my sister's wedding. She said I would look back on this and know I had made a mistake. She said whatever had happened between Violet and me was something that could be worked through and that choosing to absent myself from a day this significant was not the way to work through it. I listened to all of it. Then I said, "Mum, I understand why you see it that way. But I need you to hear something. What Violet did was not a small thing. It was a significant breach of my trust and it had real consequences for me. I have waited 6 months for something that felt like genuine acknowledgement of that and it has not come. Going to that wedding would require me to pretend that it has. I am not able to do that." She said, "But it is her wedding." I said, "I know. And I am sorry that my absence will be difficult. But I cannot make a decision about my own life around the significance of someone else's occasion when that person has not repaired what is broken between us." My mother was quiet. She said, "This will not be easy to explain to people." I said, "I know. I am sorry for that part of it." She said, "I hope you are right about this, McGrath." I said, "I hope so too." The wedding was on a Saturday in June. I know this because I had known the date since the invitation arrived and because it sat in my awareness with a particular quality that I had not expected, not triumphant, not entirely at peace, just present. A date I was aware of. A room I was not in. I spent the morning of Violet's wedding doing ordinary things. I made coffee. I went for a long walk. I called a friend who knew the situation and who did not push me to talk about it but who was simply there, which was what I needed. In the afternoon I sat in my apartment and I let myself feel whatever I was actually feeling rather than the feeling I thought I should have or the feeling that would have made the decision look cleaner. What I felt was complicated. I felt sad, genuinely sad, for the version of the relationship with Violet that I had always wanted and had never quite had. I felt something that was not quite guilt but was adjacent to it, the weight of knowing that my absence had a cost for other people and that I had chosen my own truth anyway. And underneath both of those things, I felt something steadier and quieter. I felt right. Not satisfied. Not vindicated. Just right. The particular quality of having made a decision that aligned with what I actually believed and what I actually needed, rather than with what was expected of me or what would have been easiest for everyone else. That feeling was worth sitting with the harder ones. Violet and I did not speak for another 2 months after the wedding. When we did speak, it was because she called me. Her voice on that call was different from any other version of her voice I had heard, quieter, more careful, with something in it that I had not heard from her before. Something that sounded, for the first time, like she had actually sat with what had happened rather than waiting for me to stop being affected by it. She said, "I have been thinking about what you said. About the difference between meaning well and apologizing." I said, "Okay." She said, "I think I have been using my intentions as a way of not fully owning what I did. And I want to stop doing that." I said, "I am listening." She said, "What I did was wrong. Not because it spread further than I meant it to. Because I took something you gave me in confidence and I chose to share it. The reason I shared it does not change the fact that it was yours to decide what to do with, and I took that decision from you. I am sorry. Not for the way it turned out. For what I actually did." I sat with that for a moment. It was a real apology. The kind with the shape of genuine accountability, no qualifications, no redirections, no immediate pivot toward what she needed from me in return. Just an acknowledgement of what had happened and what it had cost. I said, "Thank you. That means something to me." She said, "I know I hurt you. I know missing the wedding was about more than one day. I understand that now." I said, "It was. But I think what you just said is the beginning of something." She said, "I hope so." Violet and I are in contact. We are not what we were, but what we were was never entirely what I needed it to be, and I think that is something we are both beginning to understand. We talk sometimes. Carefully. There is an honesty in it now that was not there before, not because honesty is easy between us, but because we have both been through enough now to understand that the alternative is worse. The alternative is the version of closeness we had before, which looked like a relationship and functioned like a performance. I am not interested in the performance anymore. I went to have coffee with Violet last month. It was the first time I had seen her since before the wedding. She looked different, settled in the way that people look settled when they have made a commitment and are living inside it. We talked about her marriage and my life and our mother and small ordinary things, and there were moments that felt genuinely warm. At one point she said, "I am glad you called me instead of just not showing up. Even though what you said was hard to hear." I said, "I thought you deserved to hear it from me." She said, "I did. And I did not deserve it, but I am glad you gave it to me anyway." I thought that was the most honest thing she had said to me in years. I am 29 years old and I did not go to my sister's wedding. In our family, this is still something that gets referred to. Not constantly, people move on, but it comes up. The wedding McGrath missed. The thing that happened. The year Violet and McGrath were not speaking. I have made my peace with being part of that story. Because the alternative, the version of the story where I went, where I sat in that church in a dress I had chosen carefully and smiled through a day I was not ready for, would have been a different kind of story. One where I had chosen everyone else's comfort over my own truth. One where I had let an occasion override what I actually knew and felt and needed. I learned something during that year that I want to share. Showing up for the people you love does not always mean being physically present. Sometimes it means being honest when honesty is harder than attendance. Sometimes it means making a choice that costs you something, in family relationships, in other people's opinion of you, in the clean narrative where everyone behaves well at the significant moments, because the alternative costs you something more important. It costs you yourself. I kept myself that year. Not perfectly. Not without pain. But I made a decision that was mine, based on what I genuinely knew and felt, and I stood behind it when it was difficult and I do not regret it. Also learned that real repair, the kind that actually changes something between two people rather than just smoothing over the surface, requires the person who caused the harm to do the work of understanding it. You cannot attend your way into repair. You cannot perform your way into it. It requires the honest accounting that Violet finally gave me on that phone call, 2 months after her wedding. The invitation was not enough. The apology was, "My name is McGrath. I am 29 years old. My sister betrayed my trust and sent me a wedding invitation and expected me to come. I did not go. And I have not spent a single day regretting it. That is my story." She sent me an invitation in a cream envelope with my name in gold. She expected me to walk into that church and perform something I did not feel. I stayed home. I sat with the complicated feeling of a decision that was right and still hard. And I would do it again. Thank you for listening. This is Haely Stories. We will see you in the next one.